We begin with President Biden's visit to Florida, set for later today, to get a look at a first-hand look at the damage left behind by Hurricane Ian.
That's right. It was a week ago today that Ian made landfall in southwest Florida. And now each day that passes, hope for finding survivors fades. The number of people confirmed dead is now 105, but the search is ongoing. Rescue crews are continuing to comb through the hardest hit areas in Ian's path, like Lee County. But the sheriff of Lee County is indicating that very soon this will transition from a rescue mission into a recovery mission. People are still struggling to get basic necessities and reporting confusion over how to apply for FEMA aid. Governor Ron DeSantis announced the state's first disaster recovery center opened yesterday in Fort Myers, with more centers set to open in coming days. President Biden is expected to meet with Governor DeSantis when he arrives in Florida today. And despite the tragedy, there will be an undercurrent of politics in this visit as the two potential presidential opponents work together to help Florida recover from Ian. For more on this, we have NBC News correspondent Dasha Burns and NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Rafa. Good to see you both. So, Dasha, let's start with you. I know you're on the ground there, and according to the Washington Post, nearly 3,000 people have been affected by the storm, and they're staying at around 22 shelters. You're actually at one of those shelters, Hertz Arena. Tell us about what you're seeing, what kind of assistance people who are displaced by the storm can actually receive there.
Yeah, Zinkley, you know, nobody ever wants to come to a place like this. Most people don't think they'll ever need to come to a place like this, but boy, is it important to have a place like this and these resources when disaster strikes. And I want to tell you more about what's going on here, and I want to bring in Lori Arnold with the Red Cross here. So, Lori, walk me through what kinds of resources you're providing here, and who's here? How many people are here? What's going on?
So to start out with, we do have about 500 people staying in this particular shelter, but we also have over 20 shelters available in the area that aren't at capacity. So there's plenty of room still for people to come in. We still expect that with more search and rescue happening, there could be even more people coming into shelters. Here in our Red Cross shelters, and we work with our community partners to bring in medical supplies for people who've lost their medications. We have 3 meals a day, safe place to sleep. And ultimately, we also want to bring people comfort and hope home and make this feel like they're home while they're displaced.
And speaking of home, I mean, a lot of people lost everything. They're trying to figure out how to get their lives back. How long do you expect to be open?
So at the moment, it's still really early. It seems like the hurricane happened last week, but it's still very early in our recovery stage. And so we are still looking to see how long people are going to need to be here. But I can say that we will not be sending anybody home before it's time. We will have these shelters open as long as necessary. But our goal is to get people back to whatever their new normal is going to look like as soon as possible.
You'll be open as long as it's needed.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Zinkley, as long as it's needed.
I mean, powerful words there. And thank you also to that Red Cross volunteer and representative for the work that you're doing on the ground. It's so good that we could hear from you. And Dasha, I did want to ask about another group, the Army Corps of Engineers, who I understand is also on the ground as part of the federal storm response under FEMA. They just launched an assistance program for people whose homes were damaged. So how exactly does that practically work?
Yeah, so you've got folks who have lost everything, who need to seek shelter at a place like this, people who are staying with relatives, right? But then there are those people that are sort of in between and trying to figure out what to do, whose homes are still somewhat livable, but their roofs are damaged. They're sort of exposed to the elements. And what the Army Corps of Engineers is doing is a program called Operation Blue Roof. They just launched this a couple of days ago. They will bring in heavy reinforced tarps that they can put over people's roofs so that they're protected, so that they can remain at home while they're looking for those more long-term solutions. So it's a temporary solution, but it helps people be able to stay in their homes, not have to use resources like this which are for people who, you know, really need it. There's a hotline that you can call. It's free of charge. It's for folks in Lee County and Charlotte County. Call this number. Army Corps of Engineers will be there. Help fix your roof.
Really important there, Dasha. Thank you. And Ali, I want to bring you in because, as I said earlier, President Biden is set to visit Fort Myers, one of the hardest hit cities, and then he will deliver his remarks. What are we expecting him to talk about?
Yeah, good morning, Clay. We expect President Biden to fly into Fort Myers later today, and he'll then receive this briefing from Florida's Republican Governor Ron DeSantis, as well as the FEMA administrator. The AP is also reporting that Florida Senator Rick Scott will also join state and local officials during this briefing. And President Biden has already committed to any federal relief that the state needs in its disaster recovery efforts. So what we really expect from him today is to take on this role that we so often see him take on during national tragedies, this role of consoler in chief. You heard Dasha lay out really how dire the situation is on the ground there. So that's something that President Biden is sure to address, try to offer as much comfort as possible to these people who are really rebuilding their lives, Zinclair.
Yeah, a lot of comfort needed. And unfortunately, for better or worse, there's also the optics of two possible presidential opponents, Biden and DeSantis, meeting together. We know that there's been tension between them, most recently about immigration. So in terms of Florida's recovery, how have the two been working together so far? What can we expect from their meeting?
Yeah, so this won't be the first time these two have met in person. They actually met for the first time last year during the Surfside condo collapse in South Florida. But this will be sort of a culmination of so many polarizing political events. These two have been on the complete opposite ends of the spectrum on. Most recently, of course, as you mentioned, that decision by Ron DeSantis to send that group of migrants to Martha's Vineyard. That's something that President Biden slammed as, quote, reckless. But White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre really told us yesterday that today is not the day for these two to hash out their differences, that they are solely focused on disaster recovery efforts. We know these two have spoken on the phone several times since this hurricane and have actually praised each other's work, both federally and on the state level. So I wouldn't expect any punches today. Definitely expect both of them to keep the focus solely on disaster recovery.
Yeah, focus on recovery. Dasha on the ground in Florida, Allie in Washington. Thank you both.
Now, this morning, Russian President Vladimir Putin has formally signed into law the annexation of 4 Ukrainian regions, the final step in a process denounced as illegal by Kyiv and by the West. The law incorporates 4 southern and eastern provinces seen here, all of which make up about 18% of Ukraine. However, Russian forces do not fully control any of these regions. And now Russian-controlled territory is actually said to be shrinking after President Zelensky announced his forces recaptured dozens of towns in a rapid advance, both in the southern and eastern parts of the country. NBC News correspondent Cal Perry joins us from Kyiv with more on all this. Hey, Cal, good to see you. So Ukrainian forces do appear to be making progress in their offensive, specifically in these newly annexed regions. What can you tell us about this offensive and what's happening to Russia's defensive lines?
Well, if you take the Ministry of Defense here in Ukraine at face value, the progress has been absolutely stunning. Since we last spoke, it's possible that they've moved those Russian lines in the southern part of the country some 10 miles. And we're talking specifically about the area in and around Herschel. You would have seen it on that map that we had. It's sort of one of those southern provinces. And that seems to be where Ukrainian troops have had a bit of a breakout, where they've been able to penetrate some of those Russian lines. You see there Herschel, just north of Crimea, just south of Zaporizhia. And that, again, is where we understand the largest gains are being made. And these are strategically very important cities. These are either spur rail line cities where you can get equipment in and out, or these are, in the case of Herschel, this is a city right on the Dnipro River. So the idea would be to push Russian soldiers across that river and then be able to continue to move these lines. All of this coming just before winter sets in the eastern part of Ukraine. It's very clear that the Ukrainian military is using momentum and speed to try to push these forces back as quickly as they can, and they are leaving death and destruction in their wake. We do not have a good idea of casualty numbers on either side, but we do know a number of Russian bodies, soldiers lying in the streets of these cities, guys.
We also might see some momentum come in the form of help from the U.S. President Biden spoke on the phone with President Zelensky yesterday, and it looks like we're pledging even more military aid. Talk to us about what that includes, what that number is, and if the leaders discussed anything else.
So $650 million of further military aid, and we're talking specifically about what you see on your screen there. These are mobile artillery, long-range rocket systems. This is something that the Ukrainian military has been asking for months, and it will allow them, as they say, to continue to push back these Russian troops, but not just push them back, keep them back. And the thing about what you're seeing on your screen is these systems run in vehicles. They're not track vehicles. They run with normal tires, so they can run and be run by a small crew. They're very mobile. They're very effective, and I will add the training of which these Ukrainian soldiers are receiving is expert Western training to use these systems and to bring them down on the Russian forces that are across that river, guys.
And Cal, before I let you go, I want to ask you about something we've been talking a lot about, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. It's been said that they may restart some reactors soon. It's been shut down because of fighting going on in that area. What's happening there now?
Just in the last 5 minutes, Savannah, we heard from them. They said they're going to hold off on turning on those extra reactors. When they turn them on, it takes a lot more sort of maintenance. At one point, they had to go to battery power a couple weeks ago. You may have remembered that made everybody nervous. So sort of status quo, it's staying as it is right now. The good news is that the director, the Ukrainian director of this site, who was taken into custody by Russian soldiers, we understand, has been released. So we're going to continue to watch that situation. But as it is right now, officials telling us they're going to keep the reactors that they have on now on and not turn on any extra ones.
Cal Perry, thanks for your reporting. Stay safe.
Now let's bring in Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. He's a senior fellow and military expert at Defense Priorities. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. So I want to jump in with these gains that we're seeing by Ukrainian forces in the south and the east. Are you surprised at all by these latest battlefield developments, especially given the size of Ukraine's team?
You know, I am a little bit surprised, I got to say, because, you know, the size of the Ukrainian forces that we thought was the case earlier, we now know is not, that they have substantially expanded their fighting base. And I think that surprised the Russians as well, because they thought they had a smaller group to contend with. And so when they allocated forces in both the north and in the south, they didn't allocate enough. And now then what you see is Zelensky is just going all out to do everything he can to win as much territory he can as fast as he can before Vladimir Putin's mobilization starts to take effect and they bring in potentially hundreds of thousands of additional soldiers. And I think that's what you're trying to see right now, is to push Russia as far back as fast as they can.
And you're talking about an increase in manpower. We've also heard about an increase in funds. The U.S. is pledging an extra $625 million in military aid. And just yesterday, we actually spoke with a guest who said the West should not back down its support for Ukraine despite these annexations and Russian warnings. So you, though, wrote an article for NBC, an op-ed recently, that aggressive U.S. support risks a dangerous escalation. So what do you think the West position should be?
Yeah, you know, I think that the White House recognizes this. And you saw with that package today, they sent 4 more HIMARS and 16 more 155 millimeter, and 16 105 millimeter howitzers, which are good for defense, but that's not like large numbers that would be necessary to really push the issue. Also key, what's not in that package is ATACMS, which is the very long-range rocket systems that can strike into Russia. So I think Biden is careful that he's trying to thread that needle, that he wants to help Ukraine, but he doesn't want to risk provoking the worst thing for American national interest at all, and that is the use of a nuclear weapon in Ukraine.
Absolutely. Nuclear usage, bad for everyone. And in the wake of these annexations, I know President Zelensky signed a decree making it essentially impossible for talks with President Putin. Given that, do you really practically see any scenario where both sides are able to negotiate, make it to that table, or are we now at the point of no return?
At the moment, there is zero chance of any negotiated settlement, I'm regretful to say, because that means that a lot more people are going to die. But you see that Zelensky is absolutely fully in on this. Putin is fully in on this. And until this mobilization plays out, until this surge of Ukrainian forces plays out in both the north and the south, no one's going to even think about it, because both sides think they can win. And until one or actually both sides realize that they can't get a military victory, then you have the possibility for negotiations. But we're not even close to that right now.
2 persistent leaders. Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, thank you for that perspective.
And turning now to the growing fallout surrounding Georgia Senate candidate Herschel Walker. The Daily Beast published a story Monday alleging that Walker had paid for a woman to have an abortion back in 2009. NBC News has not yet verified the claims made in the report. The allegations come as Walker is locked in a close race with Democratic incumbent Raphael Warnock for the open Senate seat in Georgia. Let's bring in NBC News reporter Julie Sirkin now for more on this. Julie, good morning. So, there are some explosive details here in that report, not only just because this is a hotly contested race, also because Walker is running as a staunchly anti-abortion candidate, no exceptions, but then also because we've now heard from Walker's own son blasting him after this report. He called him a hypocrite, a liar, a bad father. Tell us, have we heard at all from Herschel Walker? Has he responded to these allegations so far? And what else do we need to know?
Yeah, right after the story broke, Savannah, he actually went on Fox News denying these allegations. I want you to take a listen to a part of what he said, and we can talk about it on the other side.
Do you know the woman that is making this allegation?
I have no idea, but it is a flat-out lie.
What about the $700 check? Is there anybody you can remember sending that much money to?
Well, I send money to a lot of people, and that's what's so funny.
In the last 24 hours, he's continued to deny these allegations, including his campaign, saying he's never done this. He doesn't know this woman. Of course, his son, you mentioned Christian Walker, the 23-year-old conservative commentator, has taken to TikTok and social media to blast his dad, to slam him as an absent father, to say that he's a liar for these allegations. But for Walker's part, he's been propped up, including by many anti-abortion groups like Susan B. Anthony List, a PAC which has donated plenty of money to him and other anti-abortion candidates running across the country.
And Julie, what about the GOP broadly? Have they come out in support of Walker following these claims? What are they saying about the report?
As long as Walker is going to deny these allegations, the Republicans are going to continue to line up behind him. That's because 5 weeks out from the midterm elections, that's their candidate in Georgia, one of the closest watched races across the country in the battle for Republicans to take back control of the Senate. I want to read you a portion of a statement from NRSC chair spokesperson saying, quote, Democrats are losing in Georgia and are on the verge of losing the majority. So they and their media allies are doing what they always do, attack Republicans with innuendo and lies. This, of course, is chaired by Senator Rick Scott. It's the campaign arm of Senate Republicans. So you can see Republicans lining up, including, I'm told by sources, potentially going on the campaign trail and joining Walker in these critical last few weeks.
Julie, this is really a close race. You call it these critical last few weeks. It's a critical race. It's a close race. Right now, a recent Fox News poll showed incumbent Senator Raphael Warnock only's got a 5-point lead over Walker. What kind of impact do we think? Have we seen any indications of what this could do to Walker's campaign with just a month or so?
Yeah, Democrats are running with abortion on top of mind, even though Republicans on the flip side are capitalizing on issues like inflation and the border and crime, including President Joe Biden's low approval ratings in these crucial last few weeks. They're hoping, Democrats that is, that abortion does put them over the top, including in states like Georgia. You could see that close margin, but Republicans are going to continue to stand behind Walker and hope that those other issues take the forefront in these last few weeks leading up to the midterms. And of course, joining him on the campaign trail, hoping that these issues are nothing but a distraction, like some of them told me.
All right, Julie Sirkin, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.